I lived and worked in Glacier National Park for 4.5 months this summer, and during that time I hiked 250 miles. Before going to Glacier, I had never really been much of a hiker. I don't think I'd hiked more than 5 miles at a time, and I had definitely never climbed a mountain before. So I was starting at a very beginner level. I only did day hikes, no backpacking, but the hikes on this list range anywhere from 2 miles to 22 miles. Some are well-known trailed hikes and others are off-trail peak climbs. I wanted to make this video as a way to summarize my experience and relive my amazing summer through pictures and videos and stories. As a disclaimer, weather conditions have a huge impact on my experience of a trail. This is very subjective. There are also several hikes that I really wanted to do and did not have the chance to do. There's really so much to do in Glacier that you can spend 4 months there and not do everything that you want. So a couple notable hikes that I did not do are the Dawson Ptarmigan Loop, Gunsight Pass, and Floral Park. First, I'm going to start this list with the only hike that I did not actually finish, which will come in at number 25 just by default. Scenic Point. This is a 6-mile round-trip hike into Medicine, and I attempted this on August 18th. I chose to do this on a red flag day by myself, so my bad. I got within a half mile of the point, and I decided that there was just no way I could finish it. The wind had gone from just being unpleasant to actually dangerous at that point when I was up on a cliff. So I didn't actually finish it. I also don't have any pictures. I think I deleted the only pictures I took. So whatever. Next time I'll pick a nicer day and actually go to the point. Number 24 on the list, Deadwood Falls. This is a 2-mile round trip hike located in the St. Mary Lake area, and I completed this on June 2nd. This short hike is on the Gunsight Pass Trail. You start from the Jackson Glacier Overlook. We did this hike in the evening after work. The major downside of this hike, in addition to it just being short, is that it's downhill on the way there and uphill on the way back, which is never fun. But the waterfalls are nice. It's also something you could do as part of a longer hike, whether that's Florence Falls or Gunsight Pass. Number 23, the Hidden Lake Overlook, a 2-mile round trip located at Logan Pass, completed on June 13th. My friends and I did this on the opening day of Logan Pass this season, so the boardwalk and much of the trail was still covered in ice, which actually gave us the rare experience of a challenging, even dangerous hike on the Hidden Lake Overlook Trail. I did most of the same boardwalk trail again when I climbed Reynolds in September. I would say that climbing Reynolds or one of the other mountains in the Logan Pass area is the real Hidden Lake Overlook, and it offers amazing views of the lake and the Logan Pass area with way fewer crowds. However, I understand that if you're visiting the park, you probably just have to do Hidden Lake Overlook. It won't take you very long, and you'll take some nice pictures. It's fine. Number 22, Lee Ridge, 12-mile round trip, located in the Chief Mountain area and completed on September 23rd. This hike was in the woods for the first 4.5 miles, but the eventual ridge is really nice. It's a part of the park you most likely won't spend a lot of time in, so you get interesting and unique views of Chief Mountain and the Belly River Valley. It would have been better if it was sunny and clear, but it was very overcast on the day that I hiked this, so we couldn't see the top of Mount Cleveland and other views that we would have gotten in that area. But it was still fine. There are worse ways to spend your day. This is probably a hike you'd do if you'd already been living in the park for 4 months and were struggling to come up with something new for your day off, and maybe your boyfriend has COVID, so anything over 20 miles or involving climbing a mountain is off limits. It was fine. Number 21, Apikuni Falls, 2-mile round trip, located in Many Glacier, completed on May 23rd. This is a short and decent climb with decent falls. Along the way, you get some nice views of the Many Glacier Valley. This is ranked above Deadwood Falls because at least it's uphill on the way there and downhill on the way back. It also has basically its own trailhead, so it may be a nice one to do if parking is tight or if you're limited for time. Number 20, Dancing Lady, 10-mile round trip located in East Glacier, completed on June 23rd. For this mountain climb, you can park at Glacier Park Lodge and leave from there. You do need a Blackfeet recreation pass to do this hike, since you start on tribal land before crossing over into the park on foot. Dancing Lady is a noticeable mountain from East Glacier, so it's a fun one to say you climbed. I was chilling at GPL one day and a tour group walked by and the guide pointed out this mountain through the window, and I had to hold myself back from saying, "Hey, I climbed that." The view was pretty good. We could see far out into the plains. We could see the town of Browning. It's worth climbing something on the edge of the range for that reason. You get different views than when you climb a more interior mountain. Number 19, Florence Falls, 10-mile round trip, located in the St. Mary Valley and completed on June 12th. The typical trailhead is the Jackson Glacier Overlook, but we hiked from the St. Mary Falls trailhead because we did this when the road was closed before Jackson. It's kind of a monotonous trail and really overgrown. It would be a good one to do in berry season. The views from the valley are beautiful, however, and the falls are large and unique for the park. This is a good trail for either early season or late season when higher elevation stuff is off limits due to snow. Number 18, Divide. This is a 2-mile round trip mountain climb with about 2,000 feet of elevation gain, located in the St. Mary area. I attempted this on August 9th and completed it on August 23rd. This is a very steep climb with some rock climbing sections and then a hike on a ridge. Know your route, as you should when you're doing any mountain climb, and don't do it if you're afraid of heights. In my initial attempt at this climb, I went with a friend who ended up being very afraid of heights, even though he had climbed other mountains, such as Oberlin before. Divide was just a different situation that he was uncomfortable in. Also, be very careful of wind and conditions. I had a bad experience even when me and my friend did complete the summit because we had really bad wind, which cost us time, and then we were losing daylight on the way down, and because of that, we also had route finding issues. Also, the rocks are sharp as hell, so I would recommend wearing gloves. My hands were scraped raw after that, partially because I also fell a couple times. This mountain has a reputation among people that live in the St. Mary area as being one of the easiest peaks, and it probably is, but I think that reputation set me and my friend up for trouble because it's still a mountain and you need to be prepared and know what you're doing. But it was fine. Climbing is enjoyable to me, so I liked that, but the conditions kind of ruined the experience. The views were nice, however. You can see all the way up and down the St. Mary Valley and out into the plains to the east. Number 17, Redrock Falls. 4-mile round trip, located in Many Glacier, completed on June 17th. This is a relatively short, flat hike in Many Glacier. It can also be part of a longer hike such as Bullhead Lake or Swiftcurrent Pass. The hike itself is relatively uninteresting, but the falls are a nice destination. It would be a great place to go for a swim or a picnic. Number 16, No Name Lake. This was a 12-mile round trip located in Two Medicine and completed on July 1st. We started the hike on the north side of the lake but returned via the south side, so we did the full Two Medicine Lake loop as part of this, which was fine, but the south side is steeper and woodsier and longer, so doing it on the way back made some members of our party pretty angry. The lake, however, was very nice. Freezing cold, but we all jumped in anyway. Number 15, Rockwell Falls. This is a 7-mile round trip located in Two Medicine. I completed this on August 10th and September 29th. This is a relatively flat and short hike. When I did this in early August, it was a great berry picking hike with a lot of thimbleberries. I've seen a moose in this area before, and in the meadow you get nice clear views of the mountains around you, including Rising Wolf, Sinapa, and Painted Teepee. Number 14, Dawson Pass and Mount Helen. This is an 8-mile round trip located in Two Medicine and completed on September 3rd. The initial plan was to do Dawson-Ptarmigan, but the Ptarmigan part of the loop was closed for a while due to bear frequenting. So this hike was basically kicking my ass because I was recovering from COVID, so I couldn't breathe that well, and it was really, really windy at the pass. Apparently Dawson Pass is just one of the windiest places in the park. The initial plan was to climb Flinch, which is another mountain in that area. Basically, Dawson Pass is right between Flinch and Mount Helen. We were going to climb Flinch, which would have been a more challenging, longer climb. Mount Helen was a little more of a stroll and was basically all I could handle at the time. And it was fine. We still got nice views. The weather was kind of bad. It looked like a storm was rolling in. It ultimately cleared up, but it was really, really windy and cold, so we didn't spend a lot of time at the summit. I had like 2 sips of my summit beer, turned the can upside down. None of it hit the ground. It all went whoosh. It was really windy. We used the boat across Two Medicine Lake to shave off about between 6 and 8 miles round trip, so we didn't have to hike all the way around the lake and then all the way back. So that was nice. The trail was really nice at this time of year. There were still a lot of huckleberries, actually. So it was still a really enjoyable climb. Just the end destination was not a place we wanted to spend a lot of time because of conditions. Number 13, Avalanche Lake. This is a 6-mile round trip located in West Glacier in the Lake McDonald area. I completed this on June 19th and September 30th. This is the only hike I did that's really on the west side of the range. And it's a completely different environment from the east side of the park. The west side is a lot wetter. It kind of feels like the Pacific Northwest. There's tall cedar trees. This is a relatively short and flat hike. I say relatively. I brought my mom and her friend on this hike when they visited at the end of the season, and I told them, it's flat. And they said, this is what you think is flat? But relatively. For a while, you follow a beautiful creek, Avalanche Creek, along the trail before arriving at the lake where you get a view of the waterfalls coming down off of Sperry Glacier up in the Floral Park area. Of course, you can and should combine this hike with the short Trail of the Cedars boardwalk loop. This is a very, very busy hike all around. People complain about the Logan Pass parking lot all the time, but in my opinion, Avalanche is worse. I hate parking at Avalanche. Utilize the shuttle system if possible. Number 12, Grinnell Lake. 7-mile round trip located in Many Glacier, completed on June 2nd and 6th. So this is a hike I did twice, very close together in the early season. It was a great hike to do while there was still a lot of snow around and while the other higher elevation trails, such as Grinnell Glacier, were still closed. When I did this hike, the bridge at the stream was not in place yet, so a log crossing was required. And one thing about me is I love a log crossing. The water was freezing, but you simply must wade into the water. It's a requirement. It's a beautiful spot with a beautiful view and a very pleasant, easy hike. Number 11, Crypt Lake. 12-mile round trip located in Waterton, completed on August 12th. This one's in Waterton, but I'm counting it because it's one international peace park. This is the only hike that I did in Waterton, but a shout out to the hike that I did in Banff, which was the Lake Agnes Tea House hike, which was absolutely fantastic, but since it is in Banff, I cannot reasonably include it on a list of hikes in Glacier. But Waterton, that counts. This is a very unique hike because it requires a boat ride to access, and as such, it costs a little bit of money. So you have to pay both admission to Waterton and for the boat ride per each person in your party. And I'll just say, once we reached the lake, I said to the group I was with, well, at least we didn't each pay $20 to do this. I think if it had been a sunnier day, the end destination wouldn't have felt so underwhelming. However, the trail along the way was really unique, with a good amount of elevation gain, some cliff traversing, a ladder, a cave. The real downside, honestly, was that you get dropped off at the dock in a crowd of about 100 hikers, and you all start the trail at the same time. That is a huge downside. However, it was still a really unique hike experience with the variety in the trail from start to finish. There's an alternate route on the way back, so you can experience a different section of trail for a few miles, which is always nice. We also did this trail in early August, and the thimbleberries and huckleberries were in season, which always makes a hike more enjoyable. Number 10, Triple Falls, which is a 6-mile round trip located in the St. Mary Lake area and completed on May 30th and June 30th. Triple Falls is the name for the trail that takes you to 3 different waterfalls: Bering Falls, St. Mary Falls, and Virginia Falls. It's also very popular to just do St. Mary and Virginia. However, if you want a longer experience and a better chance at parking at the larger Sun Point trailhead rather than the very small and always full St. Mary Falls trailhead, just do all 3 falls. They're beautiful. And it's a beautiful hike along the shore of St. Mary Lake, which, due to a fire in the past 10 years, has very open views. My one tip is that you should do this on a hot day and jump in at St. Mary Falls. This was truly one of the highlights of my summer. It's a very popular trail, but if you're jumping in at the falls and you love a little bit of attention, then that's just an extra perk, a built-in audience of people that are going to clap and cheer for how brave and cool you are. Number 9, Iceberg Lake. This is a 10-mile round trip located in Many Glacier and completed on June 13th. This is a great one to do early season while there's still a lot of snow and ice in and around the lake. This is a really nice trail, not too challenging, and the lake is a beautiful destination. Before I had hiked a lot more, this was one that I would say was my favorite to customers when they asked. And it's still a very rewarding, approachable hike. Number 8, Ptarmigan Tunnel, 10-mile round trip, located in Many Glacier and completed on July 15th. This hike shares the same trail as Iceberg Lake for about the first 2.5 miles before splitting off and gaining a lot more elevation. When I hiked this, I had great wildlife sightings. I saw 2 grizzly bears and a mother moose with a baby moose. And all of that was actually before we even split off from the Iceberg Lake trail, so it was right at the beginning. One of the bears walked right past our trail. It was the closest encounter I've ever had with a wild grizzly. I have this video that was airdropped to us from another hiker. My group was far too surprised by the close encounter to get our phones out. The tunnel itself is really cool, and the views on the other side are a part of the park that I didn't see from any other hike, so it was worth doing for that alone. You get views of Lake Helen and Ahern Glacier. It was a slightly hazy, smoky day when we did Ptarmigan Tunnel, so some of the views were not quite as beautiful as they might have been. However, this was still a great hike, and we made friends. We met a couple during the grizzly bear encounter. They were just in front of us. The wife was the one taking the video, which she later sent to us, and the husband kind of turned to the group of us 5 girls and said, just stay calm, just keep talking, whatever. He was very kind of calm and prepared for that grizzly encounter, which was nice. So then we kind of hiked with them for a while. They were originally planning on doing Iceberg Lake. We talked them into doing Ptarmigan Tunnel with us, and we hiked the rest of the way together, which was so fun. Number 7, Grizzly Mountain via Two Medicine Pass. This is a 22-mile round trip, which includes 2 mountain climbs and is located in Two Medicine, and we completed this on July 8th. This is rated high on the list, but it's a slightly insane hike to do. As I said, 22 miles and over 5,000 feet of elevation gain, partially because you have to go up and over Chief Lodgepole Mountain twice. And it took our group 11 and a half hours to complete. It's the most physically challenging thing I have ever done. The last 4 miles or so were just pure pain, and I was limping at work the next day. But we were blessed with picture-perfect conditions. So the hike itself is trailed a lot of the way. You follow the trail to Two Medicine Pass, which is the ridge between Rockwell Mountain and Chief Lodgepole. There was a lot of variety in terrain on the way to the ridge. This includes the entire Rockwell Falls hike, but past that, there are beautiful streams and meadows. The view from the pass was beautiful, and you could call it a day there if you don't want to kill yourself. But we continued up and over Chief Lodgepole, which is a little baby peak, and then on to Grizzly, where we followed a goat trail for a while before we had to turn and basically go straight up. This peak is just above 9,000 feet, and it's a recognizable one from many parts of the Two Medicine Valley. You get really spectacular views up there. Number 6, Cracker Lake. 13-mile round trip, located in Many Glacier, completed on August 11th. The trail itself is not my favorite. It's a popular horse trail, so there's horse shit everywhere, and you're in the woods for a good bulk of it, so you don't really get amazing views. But the lake is one of the most spectacular lakes that I have ever seen. It was giving blue Gatorade. Be sure to pick a sunny or at least partly sunny day to do this hike. We had partly cloudy conditions, and one of my favorite parts was watching the way the color of the lake changed as clouds rolled over the sun and affected the light. This trail was closed for bear activity for a good chunk of the season. A couple friends of mine, fellow pursuit employees, were actually bluff charged by a mother grizzly early in the season, and that's why it was closed. But once it reopened, I was glad to get the chance to do it. Number 5, Grinnell Glacier, a 10-mile round trip located in Many Glacier, completed on July 7th and September 28th. This is a really beautiful trail the whole way. It deserves its reputation as one of the best hikes in the park. The first time I did this was in July, and we started this hike at about 6 a.m., and the morning light was stunningly beautiful. It was also nice to beat the crowds on the way up, since it is a super popular hike and we passed about 1 billion people on our way down. You get postcard perfect views of Grinnell Lake and Mount Gould on the climb up. The end destination is the pale blue Upper Grinnell Lake, which is fed by the meltwater of Grinnell Glacier and Salamander Glacier. These two glaciers used to be connected as one huge glacier, but as with all the other glaciers in the park and around the world, they have receded a lot in the past century. However, you still get to be up close and personal with two glaciers for relatively little effort. Once we reached the lake, my friend Isaiah and I took about an hour on the rocks to soak up the sun, have some tea, even have a quick little nap. It was hard to get a sense of scale there, how tall the mountains were, how wide the lake was, how big the glaciers were. It was hard to tell, but at one point we saw this boulder across the lake start skidding down a snowfield, and then it fell into the lake with a giant splash. And we heard that splash a second after we saw it. That was amazing because all of a sudden we had an idea of how far the other side of the lake was and how big that boulder must have been. It was a really amazing moment that just has stayed with me. I did most of this hike again in late September with my mom and her friend when they came to visit at the end of the season. It was completely different conditions. It was overcast, it was cold, it was raining, sleeting, even snowing as we got higher. However, the trail was still beautiful, which leads me to believe that This is a great trail to do even if the conditions aren't perfect. It's just that beautiful. We got within view of the glacier but did not make it to the shore of the lake ultimately, partly because of the conditions and running out of time and some struggling with fear of heights, since a lot of this hike is on a fairly exposed cliff edge. So that's something to keep in mind if you're very sensitive to that kind of thing. Number 4, Reynolds Mountain. 6.5-mile round trip, located at Logan Pass, completed on September 17th. This was a really fun and relatively easy peak climb. The route is on the popular app All Trails. However, it's still a mountain, and a climber actually died on Reynolds this season, so be prepared and safe, and just know that it's always risky. You can do everything right, you can be really experienced, and you can still get into trouble and get hurt. The views on the way to the summit and at the summit were absolutely amazing. This is a high, prominent mountain with an over 9,000-foot summit. Great views of a hidden lake and the surrounding peaks, including Dragon's Tail, Clements, Bear Hat, Going to the Sun, Sai, Jackson. You could see everything. We could see a couple glaciers from the summit that I believe are Sperry Glacier and Blackfoot Glacier. This took us about 4.5 hours round trip, and we started around 7 a.m. So it's a good half-day activity. Even just going to the saddle between Reynolds and Dragon's Tail would be worth it for unique views and losing the crowds at Logan Pass. And at that point, you're able to follow a trail the entire way and don't have to worry as much about different climbing routes. Number 3, going to the Sun Mountain. 8-mile round trip, located in the St. Mary Valley, and completed on July 22nd. A lot of my climber friends cited this mountain as one of their favorites to climb and one of the best in terms of view. And I have to say they are right on both accounts. It was a fantastic climb with enough variety that it didn't just feel like an uphill slog. The views at the top were truly unrivaled. This is also such a prominent, iconic peak that it's a good one to climb for the bragging rights alone. We had fantastic conditions for the climb. We started at 6 a.m. and it took us about 8 hours. I also had my first and so far only scary bear experience on this climb. So I'll tell that story quickly. I don't have any pictures or videos of this, which is how you know it was a little scary. So on the way up, we saw some mountain goats and we could hear them kind of running around and sending rocks, like falling down the mountain. So we knew that they were there. They were kind of over to our right and about at the same elevation as us. But further up and kind of to the left, we kept hearing louder, larger rocks falling down. And my boyfriend was very on edge about that, and I didn't really know why, but he knew that that is a telltale sign of bear activity because at certain times of the year, grizzly bears will climb to high elevations and flip over boulders to eat moths that live under these big rocks. So, we kept hearing that sound of large rocks being flipped over and falling down. So eventually we saw them. They were still very, very far away from us, like little spots. But we watched them, moving around for a while, and we could tell it was a large mother grizzly with 2 cubs. They were also basically right at the ridge, which is where we wanted to go for the climb. We considered turning back, but ultimately we did not. We cut kind of lower across the ridge, which made for a much less pleasant climb, but of course a safer one because we were able to give the bears some space. They knew we were there. We knew they were there. We moved one way. The bears moved the other way. Everything was fine. We made it to the summit, no problem. On our way back now, it was a couple hours later. We thought maybe they've moved on, but obviously we were still very aware as we were coming around the side and going towards that ridge where we had seen them previously. They were still there, basically in the exact same location. So we started cutting down again away from them. At a certain point, I glanced up and saw that the bears were about half the distance that they were before. They had moved a lot closer to us in not very much time. They were moving quickly and they were coming in our direction. It's unclear, whether they were just trying to get down the mountain at the same time as us, or if our presence had sort of agitated or threatened the mother bear in some way. We'll never really know whether it was a coincidence or whether it had anything to do with us at all. But ultimately, the bears were coming in our direction. There's sort of a myth that bears are bad at going downhill. They're still a lot faster than you. I will always remember looking back and seeing this mother bear running straight down this steep mountain, and there was this dust flying up behind her, and then her two little cubs were going just like following her, kind of doing a little zigzag motion behind her. It was crazy. Essentially, the problem was that on going to the Sun Mountain, there's this row of cliffs, and there's only one feasible way up or down. So we had to find our way back to that exact point, and we also at this point were above that row of cliffs with the bears. So the call that we had to make was whether we wanted to start moving a little faster and try and get through that choke point before the bears got there, or if we wanted to hang back, let the bears move through, and then try and come through after them. That seemed a little riskier because then we wouldn't really know where they were. We could chance a close encounter with them. We thought we had enough space, we had enough of a lead that we could get through the cliffs before the bears were close enough to us that it would be a risk. And I just want to stress, these bears were still hundreds of yards away from us. They never got any closer to us than that. It was just the fact that they were moving towards us at a relatively fast pace, and that we obviously didn't know what their intentions were. That's what we did, and we got through the cliffs after that point, and we kind of cut hard in one direction and just continued making our way down. And we could see afterwards that they actually came down the cliffs at the same point. So they were trying to get down the mountain. And after that point, it's a little more wooded. It would have been hard to see them. So I think we made the right call. It's hard to say whether our kind of continued movement agitated the bears. That's possible. You're not supposed to run from bears. We weren't really running from them, but we were also moving fairly quickly away from them, so maybe running from them. But as I said, we were still very far away from them at that point. Like, the bear spray never came off our belts, or, the safety was never off, anything like that. There was still a good amount of distance the entire time. But ultimately kind of a creepy but exciting experience. What was really funny about this was we made it back to the Peak and Pass Trail, which is where we started the hike. And at that point, we were saying, as soon as we see another person out here, we're going to feel a lot better. And we're about to get to the trail and we see a group of 4 people, including one ranger. And we're like, oh my God, perfect. It's a ranger. So we come kind of bursting out of the woods. But before we're all the way back onto the trail, the ranger says, "Is that Jenny?" And I go, "Is that James?" And it was my friend who I met that summer, James, who worked for NPS as an interpretive ranger, and he was doing like a ranger-led hike on the Ptarmigan Pass Trail, and we just happened to run into him at that point, so it was hilarious. We come bursting out of the woods. We're all kind of frantic and like, we saw bears, we got chased by bears. And he has like 3 kind of elderly people that he's leading on this hike, and they have their bear spray like strapped to their chest, and they're like, and he goes, "Yeah, there's bears up there." Like, very, very ranger of him. So that was hilarious. It's just a small world when you work out there. You kind of get to know everyone pretty quickly. And then just to kind of drive it home, when we got back to the car, we were kind of getting ready, taking our hiking boots off, like chilling at the car. And then the shuttle pulls up at the Sayi Bend stop. So right there, the shuttle drives away, and I see my friend and coworker, Isaiah. We all worked at the same place. And I go, "Isaiah!" And he's like, "What?" So it was just so funny that we ran into 2 people we knew so shortly after being chased by bears. Number 2, Mount Oberlin. This is a 3.5-mile round trip in the Logan Pass area. I completed this on June 23rd and 30th and on July 13th. Oberlin is Glacier's starter peak. It has less elevation gain than a lot of regular trail hikes, and you'll always see someone else out there climbing. The route is on the app All Trails, and it's not hard to figure it out yourself. You basically go up to the saddle between Clements and Oberlin, on trail the whole way, and then there's some fun rock climbing stuff on the way to the peak. This is high up on the list for me because it's such a rewarding climb for how easy it is. I climbed it 3 times this summer and had a great experience each time. It just holds a special place in my heart. The first time I climbed it was essentially my first date with my boyfriend, so that's nice. And then the second time it was with a group of friends for sunset, and it was the last day in June, and it had been such a fantastic full day that I just couldn't believe how lucky I was. And the third time, I climbed with a friend, and a family of mountain goats followed us up to the summit, which was cool, but also a little freaky. Mountain goats are a little scary when they lower their horns at you, and they're like 10 feet away from you. And you're on top of a mountain and you have nowhere to go. They're so cute, but they're still wild animals, and I wanted to get a little more space from them than that. We also, that third time, ran into another friend of ours at the summit, which was just hilarious. You know, we get to the top, we see a person sitting by himself up there, and my friend goes, "Is that Mark?" And we're like, "Oh, hey." And then he goes, "Oh, can I get a ride home?" And we go, "What was your plan? How'd you get here?" The summit of Oberlin is a fantastic spot for sunset, especially since the down climb is pretty short and easy. You don't have to worry about it getting dark on you until you're past the steep, challenging part. Oberlin is something I would absolutely recommend to visitors. If you're up for a moderately challenging hike, it is super rewarding and a great way to lose the crowds at Logan Pass without totally striking out on your own. Number 1, Highline to Swiftcurrent. 16.5 miles. You start in Logan Pass and end in Many Glacier, and completed on August 4th. Highline is the most popular trail in the park, and as such is often called overrated by people who live and work in the area. However, I had such a great experience hiking Highline to Swiftcurrent Pass that I have to give this my number 1 spot on the list. This was a solo hike for me, and I was just euphoric the whole time. Highline is a great solo hike for safety since it's always busy and visibility is high the whole time. Swiftcurrent was a bit sketchier, but I saw enough people along the way to feel pretty safe. And I was prepared, made sure to make noise through the woods and all that. The only wildlife encounter I had while alone was a female moose near Bullhead Lake who did not care about me whatsoever. This was about 16.5 miles, including the Grinnell Glacier Overlook, which is a must as an add-on. Don't skip it. The rest of the hike has very little elevation gain, so you have to just buck up and climb 900 feet to see this overlook. What I loved about this hike was that there was so much variety in views and hiking experience. It's not a round-trip hike. You don't have to circle back on the same trail. Instead, you hike across a section of the park, from Logan Pass to Many Glacier. Logistically, it was easy to manage. I parked my car at the Swiftcurrent Pass trailhead the night before. Then, in the morning, I caught the first shuttle at 8 a.m. up to Logan Pass from the St. Mary Visitor Center. Then, I just hiked back to my car. I loved solo hiking because I think it actually increased my sense of camaraderie with other hikers on the trail. I talked to people more than I would if I was with friends. I talked to a family of 5 on the shuttle bus, which was a super fun start to the day. Then I actually met a couple from Tennessee on Swiftcurrent Pass. They were the only other people I saw after I left Granite Park Chalet, so I was happy to see them. I passed them once, then I stopped to pick thimbleberries, so they passed me, and then I passed them again. On the third interaction, they asked me for a dinner recommendation in Many, and I said I was just going to grab some pizza and a beer at the Swiftcurrent Motor Inn. We saw each other again at the restaurant, and we ate together, and they bought me a beer in exchange for a ride from Swiftcurrent just a mile down the road to the Many Glacier Hotel, where they were staying that night before their plan was then to hike back to their car at Logan, or possibly take a shuttle. It was simply an amazing day for me. It feels kind of cheesy to say that it was empowering, but it honestly was. I wish that solo hiking was a safer thing to do because I really loved the experience, even though my mom got so mad at me. I remember just taking deep breaths on the trail and feeling so full of life and happy to be there. So even though certain people, like my boyfriend, say that the Highline is the most overrated trail in the park, I have to be honest and say that my experience of this trail was my favorite of the summer. Although, don't do Highline to the loop like 90% of tourists. Do something different, a little longer, a little more challenging, and a lot more interesting. Hike Highline to Swiftcurrent Pass. That way you're also passing Bullhead Lake, Redrock Falls, and other popular hiking destinations all in one day. Well, that's my ranking. Even after 4.5 months hiking 25 hikes and a total of 250 miles, there's still a lot I want to do in the park. So I can only imagine how hard it is for visitors who only have a couple days in the area to prioritize what to do. Since I lived in St. Mary, most of my exploration was on the east side of the park, which is of course the far, far superior side of the park. But I would love to explore the North Fork more. I didn't do any hikes there. My only time going to Kintla was one time when we were dropping off hitchhikers. Otherwise, I would have never made it up that way. And then, of course, there are a lot more mountains that I want to climb. Once you start bagging peaks, that opens up a whole new level of exploration for you, and it does kind of ruin regular hiking trails. I am working on a video summarizing my entire experience working a seasonal job in Glacier National Park. It's just going to require a little more organization than this one to make sure that I talk about all the things that I want to talk about. But spoiler alert, it was awesome. I think early on I described it to one of my friends there as life-ruiningly fun. It kind of did ruin my life, but it was so fun. So I know this is like a really huge, weird departure from my earlier content, but I just had to get this out there because it's something that I really wanted to make, to summarize my experience for myself and, you know, maybe send it to my friends and my family. And if you guys got anything out of it too, then that's awesome. The video about my seasonal work experience will probably be more helpful because when I was applying for this job, I watched a bunch of YouTube videos about seasonal work and they were super, super helpful. So I definitely want to give back to that and talk about all the things that I learned. That probably won't be out for a couple more weeks. I have a lot of stuff to do now that I'm back home, but I will work on that. And until then, thanks for watching. You can't listen to my video.
I'm gonna ruin a take. I may as well ruin
it good. Get out.
I'm the bear.
It's the bear!